Okay, good. Okay. So first of all, I just want to thank all of our panelists and our two moderators. I think we've had, just fascinating presentations today representing people who are pioneers, people who are pioneering using tools and technology, using software and hardware in new and innovative ways, being disruptive. And so we're the final panel, and the three keynotes certainly represent as much of that as all the panelists did. And what I want to do is open this up, but I wanted to see if you want to have some initial comments on, thoughts that you didn't get to say earlier today. And then we can really open it up for some questions for all of you. And I certainly have some, but I want you to have your chance. And there's a few here on Twitter that I'll use. So go ahead.
Let me just, is this on? Yeah. Let me just say a couple things about the two pieces you just saw. What I really wanted to show in my talk was the very primitive first pixels and how, as we moved up Moore's Law, the pictures got better and better and better. And Ratatouille was a lot better, if you think about it, than Toy Story 1 was, as far as its richness of its backgrounds. Another reason I wanted to show Toy Story because it was the first. That was it. I wanted to show Ratatouille because that scene in Ratatouille, because there was a psychological moment there that animation can capture, and no other medium I know can capture something so poignant, so quickly, and say it so well.
Great segment, really great segment. So, questions from any of you? Someone want to jump in? You've heard Alvy this morning, and I thought he eloquently talked about Moore's Law in a way I'd never even thought about it in terms of magnitude, degrees of magnitude. Bart, really had some great things to say about apps and making apps, being successful with apps. You've just heard Stephanie, talking about how so many people who have come to IndieCade over the 8 years plus, have been innovative and, introduced new ways of making tools and technologies create experiences.
Can I ask a question?
There you go, please.
You guys set out, Alvy, like, what was it, 30 years ago now?
Oh, I don't know where it was coming from. I thought it was coming from you.
It's probably a better place to look anyway. Better looking crowd for sure. But you guys set out to make, you sort of had this big crazy dream of making a full-length motion movie, and then you hit that and just knocked it out of the park. What's been the most amazing? Has it been sort of just watching the power of Moore's Law with these extra zeros? Or what's the thing that surprised you, right? You thought, one day there'll be a movie that's full length. You did that, so what's the big surprise after that?
All right, so the first Holy Grail was to make the first movie, and we got there. And I think the next Holy Grail is the first live-action movie made without a camera. Completely digital.
But that's in the future. What sort of has happened?
Yeah, but it's something to aim for, right? And I think it's doable.
To aim for.
Yeah, because of Curious Case of Benjamin Button, we already know we can put a convincing avatar on the screen. What if every character was an avatar and the entire thing was done without a computer? I think that's the next Holy Grail. And
you're talking about a live action film.
This is great.
That looks real.
It looks absolutely real. You'll not even cross your mind that those aren't real human beings up there, because they will look so real, and they will be driven by talented actors whose specialty is to convince us that they're somebody who they are not.
So will they be new digital actors, or they'll be basically recreating Philip Seymour Hoffman, or
I think it'll be both. It'll be
okay.
Once you free the actor from the presentation of the actors don't have to be pretty or beautiful anymore, right?
You never shot, man. You and I.
In fact, we already have these actors. They're called animators. John Lasseter's he's a nice guy, but he's not very pretty. But when he acts, we call it animation, and he makes you believe his characters are alive, and just like an actor makes you feel like his or her character is alive. So we already know how to do it. We just have to make the avatars convincing, which is doable also.
And it's already here. It's just unequally distributed.
It's not. Okay, here's what's not here. No self-respecting actor or actress is going to put up with this dots on their face and the rubber bodysuit stuff more than once or twice. So somehow we've got to create an interface between the talent and the avatar of the talent on the screen. And that's non-trivial. I think it might require artificial intelligence. So that's, in fact, it's so non-trivial, it could be the hang-up. It might always be cheaper just to hire the actress or actor and film them, you know?
So that example that you showed, you went from baby to baby in that Aria
Yeah.
de Capo of
Yeah.
a presentation. In Mark Sager's baby, is the direction we're headed, you can actually customize a character on your iPad for your kid that will basically have the responses and interactions that you might want them to have?
Yeah, I think that's where Mark is, he's saying, okay, here is a very simple artificial intelligence, which is all we can do so far. But you can imagine we get more horsepower, Moore's Law gives that to us, and we learn more and more what it is that actually makes us convinced that we're, you know, that there's a human back there.
Right.
We might get to actors one of these days. So far it's a pipe dream. We don't really have a clue how to do that, but Mark is making the first step.
Yeah, it
with
leads to
his
an
baby.
interesting
Yeah.
direction because, you know, right now we all, I guess you'd say, consume media that other people make for us. And so we were talking about this earlier, you know, the talents of the future will be the people who can literally both make, because they have engineering capability, and create in John Lasseter's creative kind of way, or Brad Bird, who we mentioned earlier, who did Incredibles, and Ratatouille, which we just saw. But you know, new talents that have, you know, essentially diverse capabilities to make their own content for their family or their limited community or the game that they want, you know, the people of their tribe to play. I was mentioning to Edith earlier, there's a company in New Zealand that's developed a platform that allows you to make a game with graphics. And in 2 weeks, I'm hosting a conference in New Zealand about digital disruption. And they're making a game where the 30 speakers are the creatures and the sponsors are the treasures, and you have to play the game, which is in the space where the event is, and meet all of the speakers and find all of the treasures. And basically, they're doing a leaderboard, which I thought I'd talk to Steve about that. So we don't really have a leaderboard in a game that's community oriented, but it's just a way to be disruptive during the conference. But also engage them with avatars of the people who are there. They find out different things about the speakers. They find out things about the sponsors, that kind of thing. And you could do this with your friends, for your friends. It's a new, innovative, disruptive platform, and share it with your community on Facebook. So basically we're looking at more customized media experiences if we're headed in that direction, because more and more people can use the tools. Instead of really getting a game, you get software as a service as a platform, which is their business model. If you want to create games for your friends, really easy, plug and play. You use our software as a service and pay a monthly fee for posting games on Facebook and all your other social media. Are we headed in that direction? Is that more customized media interaction?
I think everybody's more and more capable of making their own games.
You think that's going to be, something that
Well, it's kinda
disrupts
like,
the
you know,
traditional business,
I think it's
models?
like when these, like those slides about media consumption, and when there's a new technology that comes out, the old one doesn't go away. In many cases, it keeps on growing. I bet you that TV viewership is still going up, right? It's just that there's another thing, and there's the total universe of media that we consume just keeps going up, and it sort of gets past 100% because now we're doing two things at once, right? And so I do think that there's social playified experiences, Minecraft or whatever, Second Life 10 years ago, right? And platforms that let people make games. But then there's always going to be demand and appetite for just amazing stories and amazing worlds that are created by the most brilliant minds on earth, right? Whether it be John Lasseter in the case of a linear movie, or some amazing game creator. So I think there'll be both,
Okay, I apologize for asking questions of the audience, but since you're not asking questions of us.
There's some stuff on Twitter. I feel like I saw a little feed of some.
Oh, okay, well, I'll if it's coming in, I'll get it in a second. But here's a question for you. Do you prefer consuming linear media for the experience, the emotive, the cathartic, or do you like interactive media? Linear media first. Is that your preference? Interesting. Or do you like interactive media? Media that interesting. So, that's, yeah, just interesting. There's, what? On both. Okay, but no, what's your preference? What's your preference? No preference. Okay. But we have both, so that's good. It's not like one is taking the other away. Okay, there's a couple questions here. I'm giving you a chance to think of questions, but I'll ask you one here. If you were, okay, this is a question really for Bart and for Stephanie. If you were a small gaming company with little or no budget for marketing, what do you think are suggestions for how you should best market your app or your game?
The first thing is that, this is part of why we created IndieCade. It's really important to get people to see your game. If you can find any festivals, any ways to submit your game to get people to see it, that would be kind of like one of the first kind of marketing things that I would really suggest that makes a really big difference. I also think there's a lot of grassroots things that you can do that could be really creative. Social media is so important for getting the word out. I noticed that, since I noticed that so many of our games end up doing really well on the App Store, and per Bart's talk, I think that it's because there's so much word of mouth. So if you can even get yourself, you submit your game to the App Store and you start getting all of your friends and all of your relatives and everybody you know to start reviewing your game and doing things like that, those kind of things really help bring visibility to what you're doing.
I think there's still also the way of, if you hate marketing and you just want to build great games, I think there's like two things you can do to keep you out of the marketing business. And the first thing is to just be really freaking good. And a lot of that is sort of grind and discipline. I always remember meeting the Cut the Rope guys, and they had a lot of, it's a beautiful game and a beautiful mechanic and a really cool little character and story around that, but they were so disciplined, like they made it perfect. They were constantly testing it and fine-tuning and polishing it, and their polish was just amazing. And so building the perfect game is about that core inspiration and really nailing that, but then all the little bitsy details around it, and you can do that and you don't need marketing, and that's why you're getting into the field anyway. So how about you go nail that and don't spend any time doing marketing? That might not be a bad investment of your time. And the second thing is, if you build a game that's meant to be played with somebody else, right? If that's sort of the core, no, this is Words with Friends. You play it with your friends. Well, then somebody likes it, then they're going to get their friend to like it by definition because they have to share the experience. So those are two things you can do if you don't really want to be in the marketing business. It's hard because it's a very competitive landscape, but I do think those two rules can get you there if you're really good and really committed.
I'm looking around to see if there's a hand needs a mic. A hand looking for a mic right in the back there. Right.
Hello. This is a question for Mr. Smith. I just can't let this opportunity go by without asking you a question. I have two questions. Arguably, the best thing about the PIXAR films is not necessarily technology, but the stories. The stories are fantastic. Myself, I'm personally a big fan of more action-oriented superhero films. But when I sit down and watch Toy Story, Incredibles, Finding Nemo, they have a story that even draws everybody into it. So my question is, how much time do you actually spend on the story? Because I know I've read a lot of articles about the length of production.
Story's everything.
Story's everything. So it's the mold. It's how much time do you guys spend? And it's arguably the stories are better than live action films even. So how much time do you guys spend on that, as opposed to the actual production, the rendering and the modeling and things like that?
Oh, I'd say a year easy for the story, and then a year for production is sort of typical. But that's the secret. You got to have a good story. It's got to be well implemented too, but it's got to be a good story. I'm going through a new experience right now. I have a 2-year-old grandson. And so I introduced him the other day to the PIXAR oeuvre. Plunked him in front of a television set, a giant 50-inch screen, 60-inch screen, one of those. Put on Finding Nemo. And this little kid, actually it was a little frightening to me because this little kid, bouncing off the walls, 2-year-old, suddenly froze, eyes glued on the screen, and they didn't let go for the hour and a half of the movie. which is a little frightening to me. It's like it crossed my mind: Are we doing the right thing? This little kid who's sensitive to everything in the universe has just spent an hour and a half glued on this one story. So, but on the other, so it was fun to watch him. And some of the stories that Pixar tells are a little scary, actually, for a 2-year-old. So it was fun to watch him be frightened, but not want to stop watching. So.
I have a follow-up question, Alvy, to that question. This is the guy over here, which is, I'm reading the Ed Catmull book right now, who was the other founder of PIXAR, and I'm a third into the book, so don't spoil it. But the crises, like every movie has that sort of crisis, you know, where you start
every
over,
movie,
and they're all. But so far, all the crises I've read about are about the story falling apart, not making sense, and boof, you go back a year in time. In your career at PIXAR, is that how it worked? Were the crises about the story, or were there equal crises about technology? There's just not fun to work, or is the technology sort of more predictable? And like,
No,
how does that work? Where were the crises?
One of the first technical crises was lighting. We had never separated lighting out from rendering.
And is it just that
and
you
all
don't?
of a sudden they discovered that the Hollywood people that they were working with, the Disney people they were working with, could not think about lighting work as part of rendering. They had to have 2 separate functions. So suddenly there was this emergency where they had to rewrite all the code to separate lighting out from their other parts of rendering. So that lighting experts could deal with that world the way they're used to dealing with it.
But were those crises and ditches, were they as scary as the story ones? And they could
Yeah,
set
they're
you back
scary
a year?
because you
Same
know
thing.
you got to when you take you only have one software package, right? You've got to take it down and rewrite it. It's really scary because it might not work in time, right? If you've written a lot of programs, that's what happens. Sometimes it takes forever to debug, and in the middle of a production, it's frightening to have to do something like that. So I don't think Ed talks about that particular event in his book. The book's called Creativity, Inc., and it's pretty good about what really happened at PIXAR during its recent heyday.
I think that was one of 2 questions.
Just a side question.
Yes.
James Cameron's Avatar, so it's a pretty big movie. Is that a movie like that in Pixar's DNA to create something a bit more mature like that?
No. Okay. So, basically the stories come from the talent. John Lasseter was the original talent. He hired in Pete Docter and Andrew Stanton. They are masters of storytelling. And then every so often a Brad Bird comes in for a visit. And the stories are reflections of the talent. I suppose if we had a Jim Cameron walk in the door, then it'd be a Jim Cameron movie, but we don't tend to go that way. So.
Other questions? There you go. Can we get the mic? Herman.
Yeah, so I guess the question is for Bart and also for Stephanie. You gave 10 tips about how to make great games, and one of them really stand out is to quality is the king, right? And I really like that. But then I also sometimes heard arguments saying that we're on the internet age, just get it out there, don't worry about that, and worry about making it better later on. Do you see the 2 things contradicting each other? What should people get half-cooked product out into the market and get some feedback?
I'll start at that. I completely agree with Bart. It's a very, very competitive landscape out there, and you have to have a really good game and a really high quality, and it's competitive because better and better, people are getting better and better, and it has to be good on every level. But there's times when it's good to get things out early, and those times are when you're experimenting and you want feedback or iteration. So you'd want to get your game out early to the appropriate group. So it might be a closed network that you want to get that out to and get the feedback. But I think that there's, we were speaking the other morning, and I mean, we both were saying if you have a really good game, there's no way that it's going to get buried. People will find it. There's scouts out there everywhere looking for them. The good things rise to the top. So the more polished and better.
I think there's many ways to be successful in life, right? And so I think the main thing is you find the one that you're best at, and then you go with that strength. I like quality for two reasons. One, because it's 100% under your control, and a lot of us, we start a company because we are burning to make a product, and so you start there anyway, so how about you really do a good job at that? And then the second reason is, you just feels great to build something that's really well done. There's just a satisfaction for me that comes from that. So there are companies, I remember when I came to Disney for our group, I said, no, I want to build like PIXAR, but we never obviously got anywhere near that quality, but we want to do game maker driven studios was our thing. So instead of starting with a business insight, we started with an idea. And that's always been the PIXAR model. There's a filmmaker with a story that they want to tell, and you go with that more than some sort of market research or something. And so we try to do that for our games. And so that's been sort of our philosophy. I actually have friends that had a game company that did the opposites. They would we noticed 5 big trends. We're going to put out a game in each of those, and we've realized through our data analysis that if people play it for 4 hours, then we will have them. So we're going to make the 4-hour version of this game. We're going to seed it in the Philippines because it's a demographic that's comparable to the US one, but they don't spend any money, and they speak English, but they don't talk to people in the US. And you literally let the market do the work for you, and they were just numbers people. But that was not a game company, those were numbers people. And so just as but the part that I believe in terms of this topic is it's kind of a catchphrase in Silicon Valley, and I'm guessing elsewhere, of minimal viable product. If you can do less and keep your product smaller and simpler, that's a way that you can reduce your development cost and manage your risk. In many cases, it gets you to a better product. For example, Where's My Water, when we put it out, we had 60 levels, only on the iPhone, no in-app commerce, no Facebook, no fancy menu system. That stuff was all missing. But what was there was the core game, and that was really well done. So when you do this minimal viable product stuff, it allows you to be really crisp about what is it that's unique about my thing and do a really good job at that, and then later you can add all the rest. And so I think that that's a good way to sort of be committed to quality and also try to manage your cost and time to market.
Can I say one more thing about quality? Quality doesn't mean imitating something else that's good. Quality means being really true to what you're making. And I think that a lot of game makers make the mistake of trying to imitate things that have already been successful. And those games don't do as well.
I want to ask a question that piggybacks on that and what Bart said earlier, but I saw Alvy saying minimal viable product. What does that phrase mean to you?
I didn't know. I was trying it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the film business.
It's very fancy.
Yeah.
You'll be with the times if
Yeah.
you use that word.
Yeah, but you would go, gosh, is that a minimal viable story? I mean, you'd go back and rethink that one. I mean, so it applies in some worlds. I mean, I think but maybe not in other worlds of media creation, arenas.
I don't feel comfortable with
Yeah, there you go. So,
it. I don't feel comfortable with it in my world.
okay. So, getting back to this degree of innovation, it seems like there's this movement at the moment where disruptive innovation is a buzz phrase. We're using it in a couple weeks at a 2-day conference. What does it mean? What does it produce? Is it the way to go? So you were talking earlier about timing and execution. So how do you create the right balance between that and degree of innovation? How innovative do you have to be? Where do you stop? Where do you start, say that's enough?
Don't you, and wasn't this sort of I feel like if you look at PIXAR, you can correct me, but isn't it, the minimal innovation you need to make your point, to tell your story, to deliver the experience you have in mind. It's like the technology is always at the service of delivering this magical moment, whether that be a ride at the park or a video game or a movie. So therefore, you do what it takes to deliver that moment. Is right?
Yeah. Is that what you mean by MVP? Is that what you mean by minimal viable
I think it's an
product?
annoying buzzword, but I
Yeah.
think the simplest, most focused, purest essence of the thing that you're trying to deliver is the best thing, and do that. And I do think that that's a core concept at PIXAR too. Like, what is the point of this story? Sort of always driving back home to that.
I agree. The technology just brought the heel to make the story point. Doesn't really work that well though, because you know technology can only do so much. So somehow the story is being modified by what's possible and what's not.
I think for independent developers, it's about the idea and their passion about the idea, and it's not like they're trying to do it to be innovative, but often they run into things that either force them to be innovative, or because they're following their own idea and trying to make it work, it becomes innovative. So I think that that is a kind of slightly different twist in that experience. And I don't think they're very good at finding the MVP. You know, I think that that's something that requires, if you have support from the outside, having people know to do that. But it would be a good thing to teach people.
It's hard because we're all collaborative and we don't want to be prima donnas, and so four of us have this vision of this beautiful game or story. You don't want to say no to the other person saying that's a bad idea, and so the curation and the no part is actually super hard in real life.
There we go. Question on this end? And I've got
This
two
is for
questions.
Bart. What is the potential of Firefox's $25 smartphone?
Oh, Bart.
Do you know about this?
Yes. I gotta think about that for a second. How about this? I will come back to this after the next question.
Okay, I've got a couple questions here. So a question from the audience that came in from Timmy Leung is, what advice do you give to students to prepare to join the independent game industry? That's for Stephanie.
Students? Oh, God, the independent game industry is perfect for students. First of all, start volunteering at any game industry event that you possibly can and start meeting people. The independent game community is extremely open and they're really collaborative still at this point, and you can learn a lot from networking and meeting people. Like get internships and really try and get internships in independent companies. The other thing is, I think that if you're a game student, you're in really good shape by taking all of your game classes. I can't tell you how, in seeing things over the past 10 years, how much more educated you probably are coming out of school now than even a couple years people who are struggling to do this on their own. So definitely take advantage of your university resources, but definitely going to events and meeting people is crucial.
So are you ready for that?
Sure, I'll
Okay.
take the fire. I had to take a minute because a friend of mine was, or somebody I worked with was Brendan I, who was just sort of got caught up in the whole controversy about the leadership of Mozilla, and then another friend of mine just took over. Chris Beard just is now the CEO of Mozilla. So I was sort of working all through that in my jet lag state. But I think Firefox has a couple of things going for it. One is that they have a pretty passionate developer community and user community and brand. And then the other thing is that the drive towards differentiation is really strong, and there's still people trying to enter on the device market and carriers that are trying to put their stamp on the overall experience. And there's this ecosystem tension around the Android and Samsung and all that sort of stuff, and Google. And so that combined with looking for ways to drive down the overall cost of the device and making things work fast on lower performance and battery and cost chips, I think is kind of interesting. And so I think it's kind of nice, and I think it'll lead to Android running on more and more lower-end devices, and we're seeing a bunch of that coming out of China. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I was just looking at the latest screenshots of Firefox, and you know, it looks an awful lot like iOS, which I think in general is a good thing, unless Apple sues you. So there's some thoughts.
There's a question, two questions now. 1, 2, yeah. First one, second one, yeah. Why don't you take first one in the back? Yes, this gentleman.
Hi, I'm Dev Suj. I actually wanted to get you all separately and ask you this question, but I figured this would probably be the only opportunity. Coming from a different world in terms of traditional content, traditional concept, I run a toy brand, a children's brand, and we have great content, we have a great story. But then I heard Bart say earlier that there's tons of ideas out there. Everyone has great ideas. It's about, putting the money together and getting the execution. And back to Stephanie, and if you've got great story and a great content and there's tons of ideas out there, is your conference the place people go to with very developed and strong ideas to basically find the right people to execute and go to market? And how do you guys facilitate that? Do you have something in your conference to help that?
Yes. We do both of those things. I did not plant him. We do a couple things. What we realized over the years is that we needed to build a marketplace, a place for developers to come and meet potential partners or people who want to purchase things. So we have an entire kind of pre-summit to our festival that anybody who participates is able to participate in, and it's customized matchmaking to make sure that we really fit people together. And we have a range of people that come to that, including, I don't remember whose slide they had it on, I think it was yours, or somebody, NASA. Like, we have everybody from the National Aerospace coming from them to all kinds of, like, Hasbro, what are the kind of range of people. So we do that. But you don't always need finished products. One of the things that I've really learned over these years from setting up these meetings with potential publishers or purchasers is that some of the things I want to do is meet the developers or the creators kind of early and watch as you're developing and creating, and kind of be somewhat a part of that process and somewhat a part of that partnership as it moves forward. So having a completely finished product isn't always the way you need to go into it.
And sorry, one last bit to that. With the finance players looking at content and looking to invest in content to develop, whether for gaming, whether for film, for a variety of directives towards digital entertainment, your scouts, so to speak, your Disney that are attending this, and your NASA, I mean, do you support that in a sense? I mean, are you on the journey also with the individuals that are sort of looking for those partnerships, or is it just sort of like an arranger?
We arrange it, and we'll also help sit in with meetings, because one of the things that I didn't have time to talk about is that something that's coming out of all the independent games is that you're getting a lot of people who are really inexperienced that kind of need to set up their own companies and be able to kind of handle the legal, the marketing, just having a legal company, and they're not really that prepared for it. So part of what we have set up is to be able to help and support that. So yes, we do help that.
Thank you.
This gentleman here.
Thanks. My name is Roberto Smanowski. I'm a professor for literature and new media here in Hong Kong at City University, which explains the background of my question. Two obvious things I've taken from the discussion here is that the future of entertainment is interactive, and that narrative will play an important role in this. So my question is how you see the interdependence of both aspects in the future. And I don't mean just a personal alternative navigation through a pre-cooked narrative, like in games. I mean more, how do narratives that we produce automatically every day on timeline or with new devices like the narrative clip, how those narratives that the user produce themselves can be used in an interactive augmented way of telling and receiving narratives in the future. I'm sure there will be something. I don't know yet how that could look like, and I hope your imagination goes beyond mine.
Who wants to tackle
That's a really
that?
smart question. I have a country bumpkin answer.
Go ahead.
Go.
So then you guys can think of the smart answer meanwhile. So for me, the first thing I realized when we launched Tap Tap Revenge was that our competition was not Rock Band or Guitar Hero, which were the music games, but our competition was YouTube and Facebook and everything else you can do on your phone and SMS. And so that's actually how I think of this tension. And I know that's sort of not what you're scratching on, but that would be my answer, which is there's these amazing, entertaining, interactive experiences. It's called WeChat and WhatsApp and Facebook and Vine, and people just making little clips and copying it, and just their funny stuff that's happening. And that's really amazing interactive entertainment. And it competes with two-hour-long movies or 30-second, really beautifully crafted and curated gaming experiences. That's sort of how I think of that. Now over to the smarter people.
I don't really have a good response, but it made me think about alternate reality gaming. So it made me think about how, you know, in the independent space in particular, there's for people who don't know what alternate reality gaming, it's like all of a
When you're on
sudden.
drugs?
Yes. It's like all of a sudden you're playing a game, but it takes over your whole world. So you can get phone calls or faxes or text messages or whatever's on the internet, and there's kind of these whole worlds that are built around you that you actually participate like within the story. And those actually Steven Spielberg was one of the first people to create one called The Beast. But those, I've seen a couple recently. There's one really interesting one, Extra Solar, you can sign up for right now. That I think that stuff like that is probably growing in importance.
Alvy, you want a shot at that? Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure I have anything really intelligent to say, except perhaps I've been surprised that the TV series has become such a powerful new medium or vehicle. I've just sat through 20 hours of The Americans nonstop because I was an addict. Once I started, I had to see every single episode.
Right.
And that's a new way of telling a story that none of us knew about several years ago,
Right.
which
The long form.
yeah, it's long form. You can go
Episodic,
out. You
yeah.
can really explore a subject in all
Right.
sorts of wonderful ways.
Right,
It's more like a novel than it's more like a novel.
Right.
Has nothing to do with interactivity, however. So that's why I don't have anything intelligent to say to the
Right,
answer to the
right.
gentleman.
Yeah. I think the hybrid forms actually.
It's driven
if
by
I may.
like
Yeah.
the labor market, right? Like where can writers get long-term contracts as opposed to spot work? It's driven by distribution models, right? Like the HBOs and the Netflix. So it's sort of driven by everything but technology, right? That one? And I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No, that's right.
Yes.
There you go. Yes. Okay. We've got time for one or two more questions. Here's one, and I've got a closing question. Okay.
It's like most of the game, especially in the mobile market, is capitalizing on its simplicity. What do you think about some more complex games? Do you think the market is still willing to accept complex games, like with a lot of rules and like depth? I mean,
Bart, Stephanie.
Well, I think
No.
top grossing has been dominated by mid-core games and things like card battle games. They're definitely more complex than Flappy Bird. Like I don't know if that's the level of complexity that you're looking for, but I think in general there's probably investment and creative talent going into more core-y stuff than the mid-core. So I think from a business perspective, probably there's a good market in because you can monetize these users. You can make a bunch of money off a small user base, and it's less crowded out by the Candy Crush, and you can find customers at $20 and so there's sort of distribution dynamics that help that. I personally am less interested in that. Stephanie?
Okay, so my first response is try it, right? I mean, that's the thing. Take a risk and try it. But also, have you played FTL, the iPad game that was up there?
yes, I completed for like 4 times.
So that's pretty complicated, right?
Yeah.
That's not a simple game, and look how well that's doing. So I think there's potential.
There's a market for everything. So we're coming to the close. I want to ask Bart, Stephanie, and Alvy. So here we are, Snapshot 2014, digital entertainment. We've been talking about what the next decade might be like. What advice would you give our Hong Kong audience tonight in terms of where there are opportunities, what's next step do you think is a good next step for somebody who's in this industry? This is a tough one.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
hard.
Yes?
I don't like Flappy Bird the game.
Yeah.
But what I think is cool about it is that there's this dude in New Zealand, I'm sorry, in Vietnam, who just built that game. And while everybody else is trying to figure out what's hot and what's trendy, he just went to some other forum and he just did it and it worked. And so for me, when it comes to consumer apps on smartphones, I would say there's many ways to be successful. And if you're a person that's really good at market research and sensing trends and all that sort of stuff, then please go do that. But otherwise, if you got something that you're dying to do because you're good at analytics or you're good at art or you're good at, arcade games, then go do that, because it's really kind of impossible to predict the future and what kind of wave is coming next. So you might as well do the thing that you're thinking of, that you're more committed to, more excited about, and you're going to do a better job at than anybody else. So for that specific thing, that's what I would say.
Okay.
I'd say ditto to Bart.
I think it's the same kind of thing. I mean, the technology keeps changing, but it's not what the technology is, it's what you do with it. And it's not just about it, it's like the ideas you have and being able to follow through on those ideas. So it seems to me like having this kind of cross-section of so many interesting people together to cross-pollinate ideas is really important as technology and as things continue to grow. And also to somehow remain kind of nimble, because part of the trouble that all of these kind of big companies get into is the fact that things cost too much and it's hard to kind of shift and change as technology changes and as you need to change and how to move quickly. So some way maybe not to be too big.
Want to add to that? Anything? No? Passion?
I feel like I'm just repeating what both of these people just said, which is figure out what you're good at and go for it.
Yeah.
But that's trite almost, right?
But it's good advice. Okay, on that note, I'd like all of you to thank Alvy. Oh,
He's got
Steve's got a comment. Yep, one more.
Okay, yeah. This is actually not a question. It's a little surprise. So Hal has...
No,
Yeah.
no. Turn his mic off.
Hal
Turn his mic
has
off.
tirelessly
No.
and very competently shepherded this entire session through today. What Hal is very modest about is that tomorrow is his birthday. Now, he's asked me to promise that we don't sing happy birthday for him, so we're not going to do that.
Thank you.
Promise,
everybody.
we're not doing that. However, there's a little surprise. Earlier today, we had some studio space booked for us, and Alvy and one of his dear friends joined us in the studio, and we put this little message together for Hal. And why don't we just roll the film?
Oh, that's so great.
Where did you learn to sing? To you, happy birthday, dear darling. Happy birthday to
I'm not sure what to say about that, but thank you, I guess. Thank you all. Thank you, crazy guys. All right. I think that wraps up 2014 DELF. It's really been a great day. I hope you've learned a lot. I certainly have. I want to take this opportunity to thank our partners who supported the event, particularly Event Extra, which was the registration company that is based here at Cyberport, and they're a Cyberport Incubatee, and they just won an HK ICT Best ICT Startup in the bronze category. We want your feedback, and so you're going to get electronic feedback, which is appropriate. It's an email push or an SMS, is that right? That'll come a few minutes before what? It just says a few minutes before. A few minutes before we, I guess, adjourn. Okay, what's that? Before you expect it, it'll be there. So if you could, take a moment to give us some feedback about the program. And the first 100 respondents will get a Cyberport USB stick, so you can have a memory stick to move your media around. And so if you would, please bring all of your personal belongings and return the SI headsets. The first shuttle bus will leave at 5:30 p.m., and the last one to Admiralty will be at 6 p.m., so please gather at the reception counter for making your travel plans before the 6 p.m. On behalf of everyone, and I want to thank the Cyberport staff who every year tirelessly make this happen, and so thank you everyone from Cyberport for having us all here. It's just been amazing, and I want to thank all of our international speakers for taking time out of their busy week and making the time to come to Hong Kong. Alvy, and it's been 36 years, it better not be another. Hopefully we'll all get a chance to reconvene at a future DELF, but certainly all of you who are here at DELF 2015. So thank you for being here, and I hope to see you again next year. Thank you. Thank you.